That's kind of fun. I moved it away because it was just getting creepy how Ben said, man, I don't know how you did that being so close. So, yeah. All right, so we had a change of plans this morning. Brad Matrish was going to join me for this message, the tag team. That's why I put up on Facebook the WWE wrestlers, the Bushwhackers. Do you remember them? Kevin does? Yeah, they come out, they're brothers, they do this thing, they lick each other's sweaty heads and everything. They're from Australia. Yeah, it's just amazing. And they look like they're from Big Falls. They're just, they're just missing teeth and everything. So, but I was going to tag team the message with Brad, and then unfortunately Beth is not doing well. She had to go to the doctor. Brad had to take her, and then his computer crashed, and he didn't have a means to do his message, his side. So we're going to reschedule, but I'm going to carry on with what I was going to go with. And I want to talk about using what God has given you to do something, because all of us have something to do in Christianity. We all have something to bring to the table in regards to Christianity. And I thought, let's just go over it quick. We'll talk about it and see where it goes. Because whether you're a little kid, I was a youth pastor for 9 years, and we started off our youth ministry with the pastor's wife, Patty, great lady, and she led worship, and there was one kid, Justin, on the piano, and that was our worship team. By about 2 or 3 years into it, our worship team was all teens. I led for a little bit, but then eventually this girl, Courtney, who I'm very proud of, she's married, has a kid now, and she just absolutely loved and adored Darlene Check, okay, from Hillsong. And she has a really good voice, this Courtney. And so I said, you know what, let's go ahead and get you on there. John Schultz is on, Kayla, Marlene, hi Marlene. Let's see, Jennifer Hildebrandt. You're just down the road, girl. You should get to church. I'm just joking. But anyways, we got a lot of people joining us on Facebook. They're like, oh, sign off. I meant to click on Caféville. No. But anyways, eventually these kids started doing worship, and I say that because we had a full-on worship team full of teens, and so there's no age bracket as to when God asks us to do things, to use us, and really we all have something in our own unique way. Just because we're different political parties, we may not agree on things socially, we may have different views on lifestyles. You know what? God still uses us to do different things, and there's no such thing as an arrived Christian, okay? That I've come to this level of enlightenment, and now I am solid Christian, and I will proceed now with ministry and doing things. No, that's not the case. Even you read through the Old Testament, and it's just God used knuckleheads to get the job done. And when we question God on, well, I don't know if I can do this, I don't know if I should do this, reread your scriptures, because every time God asked somebody to do something, it was filled with questions. It was filled with people saying, I don't think I have what it takes. So let's focus on some of the ways we can improve our serve. I want to suggest this morning that it's possible to get so caught up in what we call our spiritual gifts that we might not even survive servanthood. You ever run into people like that? They're so caught up into books, theology, and the deeper things of Christ that they forget the basic thing, and that's to serve. And the key is not so much to identify what we have, but what we have been given. So on the screen, 1 Peter 4:10, you'll see the scripture. Let me turn on my clicker here. It's a simple verse that really illustrates what we're talking about. 1 Peter 4:10. Each one should use whatever gift he has received to serve others, faithfully administering God's grace in its various forms. Now, Matthew 24:3, he goes on to say that when will this happen, and what will be the sign of your coming and the end of your age? He concludes by saying in verse 13, therefore keep watch, because you do not know the day or the hour when he's coming back. And then chapter 25 ends with a separation. You know this verse. It ends with the separation of sheep and goats. So Jesus is teaching here, and he says, you know what? Each one of you should use whatever gift you have. Okay? Full-time ministry can be plumbing. Full-time ministry can be graphic design. Full-time ministry can be working at McDonald's. Full-time ministry can be a pastor. a worship leader, worship team. Full-time ministry is whatever you set your mind to, because Paul says in 1 Corinthians, whether you eat or drink, whatever you do it for the glory of God. And Paul even says, you know what, you're a Christian? Oh, by the way, you're a minister. If you're telling somebody and helping somebody out in Christianity, guess what? You're a minister. You're ministering. You know, if you're a nurse, you're ministering healing to a person. If you're serving somebody Christ, you're a minister. You're ministering to them. And so chapter 25 ends with the famous sheep and goats. Whatever you've done to the least of these, you've done unto me. Whatever you've not done unto the least of these, you have not done unto me. And we see here that as we walk through this powerful passage this morning, we'll see 7 what I would call stewardship lessons. So let's go through them. Number 1, Facebook, 10 viewers. Hello, Cassandra. Hope your cat's doing better. Molly from Green Bay. All right, Nitka's in the house. It's kind of fun, isn't it? You guys want to say hi to him? Here we go. There we go. Morning. We have bad weather up in Walpaca, so we're a little slim. A lot of churches are this morning, but anyways. Number 1 stewardship lesson. What we have is not ours, in case we didn't discover that already. Verse 14 continues by saying that this man who was getting ready for a journey, he called his servants and entrusted his property to them. That was like a glitch in the matrix right there. I just heard my voice over someone else's device. So he called his servants and entrusted his property to them. We know this verse. We know this story. They would often delegate, people would often delegate the control and multiplication of their wealth to trustworthy employees. So you're rich. You're financially well-to-do. You got there because of your brain power and what God's given you, but now you need someone to take care of it, to take care of that. So you entrust it to a trustworthy servant. This is where the parable of the talents come in. It's a rich guy, and he's trusting his talents into the hands of these 3 people. They would often delegate this and to the control and multiplication of their wealth to trustworthy employees. And one person said, have you allowed this basic principle to permeate your personhood? You don't really own anything. One author said it that way. You really don't own anything. Everything belongs to the Lord. Until we recognize this truth, we will not be good managers of what has been entrusted to us. Now, we're in church, so I guess the common thread would go back to your money. That's just a gimme. But let's talk about your talents. Let's talk about possessions. So I had a friend, a kid in my youth group in Milwaukee, Dan Walski. I don't think he's watching, but some of his fellow youth group mates are from back in that youth group. And I just remember getting my first motorcycle. I've told this story before. A Suzuki GS 850, 1982 model, blue oil like crazy. The gaskets were shot, you know. But it got me around, and this kid wanted to go to college, MATC, and it was a Southside campus, had no way of getting there. And so I just realized, you know what, I have a car and everything. So I told Dan to come over, and I gave him motorcycle lessons, and off he rode, you know. We have possessions, we have things, we have abundance. If you're a couponer, you have a stockpile in your basement. If you're, you know, whatever. And when we hear people, you know, sometimes we get to this point where we say, well, I'm going to wait for them to come to me. When in fact, it's like, you know what, just offer. See what happens, see where it goes if you would offer your assistance. So, we're given, as Scripture points out, we're given what we can handle. In verse 15, we see that the master gave some of the talents to 3 of his servants. We've heard this story before. To one he gave 5 talents of money, and to another 2 talents, and to another talent, each according to his ability. Then he went on his journey. Now, you have what you have because God gave it to you. We've established that. And he expects you to manage his gifts with the boundaries of ability that he's wired into you. What Kira can do is like with music and instruments and singing and all that is I have about that much. The only thing Kira and I have in common is our love for the Lord, and we both played French horn. And every time I hear Star Wars, I'm like, that guy just loved French horn, the Star Wars theme song. But that's about it. But I look at her and I'm like, she has talent and ability I will never have. We need her a part of this thing. Okay? Kevin has abilities that I don't have and that Diane doesn't have. Diane has a lot of abilities, okay? But she doesn't have what Kevin has. And you know what? I'm quite sure Kevin can't sew the way you do, Diane. Is that a safe assumption? Yeah? Okay. But we all have these things, and God's saying, you know what? I've entrusted you with this. Yes, I've entrusted you with the money. That's a gimme in church. You know, you have what you have. But at the same time, you have these other things. What are you doing with it? What are you doing with the with the talents and all this that God's given you? Do we trust that God knows more about us than we know about ourselves? Some of us have these talents. You sit down to a sketch pad and you scribble out the most beautiful piece of art on a sketch pad that's ever been seen, and someone walks by and they're like, oh, wow. And you're like, oh, I just scribbled this out. And the other person's like, I just did it. What? Why aren't you doing something, go decorate the kids' church wing or something like that? I had that when I did Noah's room. Someone messaged me like, well, we know who's painting the kids' area when we need it done again. It's one of these things like, you have a talent. Let's talk about how you can use it. I love cars. Okay, one of you may say that. I love cars. I love working on cars. I love just tinkering. Man, we live in a street here that there's a lot of people in need. Single moms, single dads that don't know anything about cars, and quite honestly, to get an oil change would cut into the grocery budget. Let's talk. Let's set up a garage in the back parking lot here. Even in the winter, let's put up some tents and some easy ups and put some cars in there and start changing oil for people, once every 3-4 months. How cool would that be? It's limitless what we can do with the abilities that God says, I'm trusting you with this. Do something with it, because if not, this is what's going to happen later on. So number 3, we must invest what we've been given. So he's given you the talent. He's given you finances. He's given you these things. Invest it. Do something with it. I've always said, I've said this to the board, the multiple boards we've had since the founding of this church, that I think, and that's typical for any church, that I think it's gross when a church has a massive savings account. What are you doing with that? Our church, I grew up in a German church, it was just Germans. You squeeze it so hard you could hear Abraham Lincoln screaming off the penny, And I was going to say something about coal and diamonds, but that's not appropriate for church. But, it's one of these things that, in a lot of churches, we have $100,000 in savings and we're in good shape. Why? I totally get the David Ramsey principle. The goal for every household, the ideal, okay, we live in the ordeal. That's the ideal. Should be about 3 months savings. Call it whatever fund you want. There's all sorts of names for this fund. But, 3 months mortgage, 3 months Wisconsin Electric, 3 months public service, your credit card, whatever you have. That's the ideal. David Ramsey says there's a 10-10-80 plan. 10% to God, 10% savings, 80% to church. I mean, to your pocket, okay, to whatever else it needs. And we get that, and we look at that, and we say, okay, so he's given this, and we must invest what he's given. And so churches that sit on this, it's like, okay, it's cool to have a couple months, but my goodness, who is sitting in your church right now that's facing foreclosure that you could help them get out? Who in your church is facing mounting medical bills that you could say, we're going to help these people out? As a pastor, I honestly can say I think it's obscene to have a massive savings account. What are you saving for? Keep the church running, keep the building going, but do ministry. Figure it out. Get things going. So we must invest what we've given. Verse 16 tells us that the man who received 5 talents went at once, the Bible says, and put his money to work and gained 5 more. He didn't waste any time, but immediately went to work on his investment. You gave me 5, this is what I'm going to do. Okay, we've done this at the church before. Here's some stuff. Go give it to the community. Let's see what happens with it. Went to work on his investment strategy and doubled his master's portfolio, to put it in modern terms. The guy who got 2 talents, he did the same thing. He went out. You know what? He didn't have 5 talents. He had 2, but he did what he could with it. And did the same thing with it. The 1 talent guy was a slacker who went off and buried his blessing. Our potential is God's gift to us. What we do with it is our gift to him. You follow me on that? Our potential is God's gift to us. And what we do with it is our gift to him. Zig Ziglar, Christian leadership guru, right up there with John Maxwell, said this: you are the only person on earth who can use your ability. Captain Obvious. But sometimes you just need it to be said like that in order to understand it. You're the only person on earth who can use your ability. So, going back to Milwaukee, we prayed this morning for my friend Ray Schultz, who's in a hospital right now. He was a board member at the church I served at, my closest friend on the board during this horrific storm that we went through down there. And they didn't come from a family means. He was the head mechanic for the city of Cudahy. And just a phenomenal guy, but his ministry to the church was, he was on the board, but for us 2 pastors, the senior pastor and myself, he always said, if you have a car problems, you buy the part. And in my sake, I would drop it off before youth group, and I drove some classic hoopty wagons, so it was there often. And he would fix the car during youth group, and I would ride home with one of his kids. One of his kids was one of our youth sponsors. And when I got back to the house, the car was done and ready to go. And he said, I'm not charging for labor. That's what he did. That was his ministry, that God gave this guy an amazing ability on cars, and yet he just blessed. That was what he did. And a lot of us have that same story. We do things, and we may not even see it here on the church side, but you do things like, wow, that's brilliant. What you're doing is brilliant for Christ. Are you investing what you've been given regardless of how much it is? Or have you buried your blessing and kept it hidden from others? So number 4, as we truck along here, a day of accountability is coming. We'll have to give an account for how we've used what we've been given. This is where Jesus says, okay, so the parable of the talents, let's go through that story. There's 5, there's 2, there's 1. These 2 guys did good. This guy was a slacker. Don't be the slacker, okay? Then there was this next story. And now Jesus is saying, oh guys, by the way, there will be a day of accountability for this. What you did with your finances, what you did with your gifting, your abilities, what you did with your family. You know, I look at the situation I'm going through right now, and I'm thinking, okay, so maybe over the last 13 years, God's seen something in me that wasn't just right. You know, he gave me talents, I've used them and, did well with them, and maybe he's seen a return on his investment now, and now he's saying, let me give you another talent. His name's Noah. Let's see what you do with this now. Okay? Maybe there was a prepping stage. I don't know. His ways are not our ways. But at the same time, we look at that and we say, let's do it. So a day of accountability is coming. Look at verse 19. I have it on the screen. After a long time, the master of those servants returned and settled accounts with them. Romans 14:12, it says that, so then each of us will give an account of himself to God. It would help us to get in the habit of asking the question when we serve, how will my money management or this decision to serve or not serve look on the day of accountability? I was talking with, I wish I could remember who I was talking with this week. It was regarding the tithe. And I just remember we did a video thing where I interviewed a few couples years ago, and we showed them, and just regarding tithes and how God blessed them. And there was one couple that are good friends, and they said, we don't believe in the tithe, we believe in joyful giving. And and that's all right. I mean, there's 2 different camps out there, and what they went on to say is that the joyful giving thing, 10% is a guideline. I need guidelines in my life. That's why I get things done, is guidelines. You go into my home office. A home office can be a blessing and it can be a curse, okay? Because you're there all the time. Going to my office, kids are still upstairs pounding. I literally have filaments in my new office and my light bulbs. Every once in a while, a light bulb will just go out because a kid decided to jump above the light fixture, and so the filament goes out. So now we got to switch to LED. But you look at that, and I literally in my office have a thing every day what I'm to do this is the base stuff, above and beyond dinners, counseling, all that stuff. That's extra, but just to keep myself on track. And so we're looking here to have accountability that it's coming. So then each of us will give an account of himself to God. So we ask ourselves, how will my money management or this decision to serve or not serve look on the day of accountability? So this person said, I believe in joyful giving. The tithe is a guideline. We all need guidelines. If you do your study in New Testament, joyful giving is like above and beyond. And they stick to it. I'm like, wow, I like it. It helps. We had a board meeting last week, and we went over the year-end finances. We ended in the black. It was just a good year. That's good. And we were talking about tithing and, how it just, like any church is up and down and stuff. And, as a pastor, unfortunately, my tithe doesn't go here. It has to go to the Assembly of God office. And, but this is what we do. And we give an account for it. And so number 5, after we know a day of accountability is coming, we see what we do with what we have reveals our view of God. The language is insightful here. He says, I have gained 5 more. The word see is like, okay, you're trying to get that person's attention. See, I have 5 more here. In other words, behold, look at this. When somebody calls me and said, I'm bringing my family to church this week. They haven't been to church in years. They call me with that excitement. See, look at this. Check this out. Look what's going on. He was eager to invest what he had been given, and now he's excited to show the master what's been done. These 2 faithful servants received, number 1, affirmation. Great job. Well done. I appreciate your good work and your faithfulness. What else did they receive? Promotion. When God entrusts you with something and you knock it out of the park, he promotes you. I literally, maybe I'm looking at it way too biblically or whatever, but I literally look at Noah as a promotion. Like, God saw something in me at this point now. He's saying, now's the time. Maybe the adoption stuff had to happen first. I don't know. I'm not going to begin to question it, but there's a promotion there. And since you've done so well with what I've given you, I'm going to give you more responsibility and opportunity for growth. What does that look like at your job? Some of you have climbed the corporate ladder. You took the job that nobody else wanted to do. You said, sure, I'll do it. You stuck around a little longer. Your salary, and you stuck around a little longer, and the boss is like, wow, this guy is really doing well. So come review time, and those are always on time when you're working, not really. They say, here's some more money, here's a raise. Or they say, we want to do a promotion for you. We'd like to give you a promotion. Are you up for it? This is a biblical concept. And then there's celebration. You've made me very happy. Let's celebrate together. Who doesn't like to celebrate? And the 1 talent guy came a bit more reluctantly to the master and said in verse 24, I knew you were a hard man. Wow. Notice the first words out of his mouth were more about himself. I knew. You don't know Jack. God gave you this ability. Use it. A.W. Tozer was right when he said that what we think about God is the most important thing about us. A wrong view of God always leads to fear. So I was afraid and went out and hid your talent in the ground. That's not who God is. He wouldn't be pleased with that. Don't hide that, what God's given you. You're walking with a limp. You've had a Jacob experience and you've met with God and you're not the same anymore. Don't share it. Don't waste that. Go share that story somewhere. Help somebody else that's going through the same thing. Number 6, what we have we must use, or what we have we will lose. He gives and takes away. We sing it in a song all the time. Job, he noticed this very thing. God gives and he takes away, but blessed be the name of the Lord. Verse 26 reveals what the master saw right through the flimsy excuses of the servant, and when he said, you wicked and lazy servant. You wicked and lazy servant. Proverbs 6:9 up on the screen. It says, How long will you lie there, you sluggard? Solomon had way with words. When will you get up from your sleep? Proverbs 10:5. Solomon says, he who gathers crops in the summer is a wise son, but he who sleeps during the harvest is a disgraceful son. Proverbs 13:4, the sluggard craves and gets nothing, but the desires of the diligent are fully satisfied. Hebrews 6:11 through 12, we want each of you to show the same diligence to the very end in order to make your hope sure. We do not want you to become lazy, but to imitate those who through faith and patience inherit what has been promised. The reason why I wanted Brad up here this morning is because here's a guy born with cerebral palsy. If you really tune in, you can listen to him. He's in a wheelchair. And he could at any point just say, done, I'm going to stay home. But this is what's been given to him. And he was one of the high-end corporate guys at Kikkoman Soy Sauce Company back doing the computers thing, internet, IT stuff. And then he switched over to Special Touch Ministries, a ministry of the Assemblies of God nationwide that reaches out to people with physical and mental disabilities. Natalie works there, and Beth Matrich works there. Val used to work there. And here's a guy that's saying, you know what? I have this disability. It's what I've been given. I'm going to be a good steward of it. He supports the church faithfully through means. He prays for it regularly. And above and beyond, he may not volunteer a whole lot here. He does what he can. But he runs and helps out with a Lift chapter, they call it, in Appleton, where he helps organize a group that he can meet with that are dealing with the same things he may be dealing with, physical or mental disabilities. Just for him to get out to his car, you've seen him have to struggle to get out to his car, but this is his way of life. And he's taking what abilities he has and he's making more talents for God. And there are multiple stories in here of what you're doing for God. Some of us, we don't tell our stories, but we know that we're doing the right thing. Others of us, it's clear what you're doing. And you're doing some awesome things. We're a group that really gets it. But could we do more? Last night at dinner, went with Tracy's family, and I'll end on this note. Went out for dinner the other night, last night, to the fancy dining Shea Rose Garden. And and so we're there, and my cousin, who just quit her executive job in Chicago, at a nonprofit, they're basically advocates for people in poverty from the hood and everything. They have lawyer representation. They have lawyers that volunteer their time. And it's one of those cases when the world acts more Christian than the Christian world down in the Chicago area. And these lawyers are volunteering their time to be advocates for them. And she quit her job to start her own thing. And one of the things they just started, and I want to connect with Ben and our friend Chris Prude as well. And one of the things they did was, and it's so simple, They did a dignity event, restoring dignity to these areas. And so every time you see a billboard, about certain areas, Garfield Park and stuff of Chicago, you see things that aren't glamorous. They're usually gun violence, all this stuff. So what they did was they had photographers come in, amateur and pro, and they set up photo booths. And they did a 5-minute interview with the person, find out maybe a few things. And then they offered to do a full-on photo shoot of them or their family because they probably never had something professional like that done before. And it went huge. And I'm thinking about it, I'm like, that is so simple. And it makes you assess what you have and how you could implement something where you live. So I went on to tell her, I said, what you need to do, because she was starting this new nonprofit that has to deal with restoring dignity to people. I said, do yourself a favor. It changed my life to hear this speech. Go on YouTube and listen to the real Patch Adams, Dr. Patch Adams, talking about restoring dignity. It wasn't a TED Talk, but it was a college talk about restoring dignity. And that has everything to do about this gospel of Jesus Christ and what we do with it. So I just wrote this down. A Christian who is not using what God has given is a contradiction in terms. As you survey your servanthood quotient and you conclude that you've buried your blessings, maybe you haven't been saved. Do you want abundance or agony in this next life? Determined to know the Master and serve him wholeheartedly. What can you do to make a difference. I look at Brad and his situation, I look at me, I'm like, man, someday when I grow up, I want to be like Brad. Someday when I grow up and look at these other people that are working at Special Touch with them, their own selves having disabilities, that's what I want to do. And we all do our own thing. What has God entrusted